Tihei Modi ora, inga mana, inga reo, inga karangatanga maha, no mai, haere mai, ka mihi ake. Ko Rimutaku te maunga, ko te ao kairangi te awa, ko Josh toku ingoa, ko manatu ahu mātua aho, e mahi ana. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Welcome, everybody. Thank you very much for having me. I feel very privileged to be here. I actually just came out of the genetics department last year. This is my first year out. And I was reminiscing earlier. I was thinking, I remember coming to these little career days and not knowing anything about what I was going to do. And now I'm here. So, yeah, it feels great. So I'm here to talk to you about the Ministry for Primary Industries, specifically the Graduate Development Program, which is the program which I am in. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run through who I am, what is MPI, what the grad program is, and then I'll go through my experience at MPI and my different rotations, and then the process for kind of getting into the grad program. So as I said, I just came out of University of Otago. I did first year health science, like everybody else, but I got hooked by molecular biology and cells 191 and Bioch 192. Really took my fancy, and since then that was kind of it. So I did a Bachelor of Science majoring in genetics, minoring in biochemistry. It's actually really interesting because Paddy, the last figure, he was one of my lab demonstrators in biochemistry, so that's a pretty cool throwback. Um, as you can see on the left there, I did lots of biochemistry papers, lots of gene papers, and then in 2021, I did only biochemistry and gene with a focus on gene. For those who are in 200 level and going into 300, if you're a genetics major, I very, very highly recommend doing Gene 360. Definitely one of the best papers I've ever done and super, super useful in the rest of my career so far. After that, I did an honors degree in genetics. Worked in the Tim Hoare's lab, which is all about possum genetics and epigenetics, and my supervisor was Melanie Laird. My project was to develop the possum as a model for benign prostatic hyperplasia, and the way we were doing that is analyzing seasonal gene expression, matching it up to physiological expression changes, and then trying to work out what the control mechanism was. On top of that, I did Gene 411, Gene 412, being a genetics honor student, and then my optional paper was Stats 435 with Nick Black. Again, definitely one of the best papers I've ever done. It was fantastic and very, very highly recommend it to those going into fourth year. So that's me. I'm going to jump into what is MPI. I'm assuming that most people actually don't have a very good idea of what MPI is, other than they control the labs and they control the farms. It's actually a little bit more complicated than that. So MPI's vision is to be the world's most sustainable provider of high-value food and primary products. And primary products kind of details a lot of different things. That includes horticulture, that includes agriculture, it includes agri-tech, it includes all of our food that we're importing, our forestry, and our fisheries. So within MPI, we've got 5 business units. We've got Biosecurity, New Zealand Food Safety, Te Ururako, or New Zealand Forest Service, Fisheries New Zealand, and Agriculture Investment Services. There is kind of like a sub-genre of MPI, which is the one that I'm in, and that's Policy and Trade, and I will talk to that soon. So the grad program, the grad development program is awesome. It's essentially you get recruited into MPI and you're given a job. Um, and you do that job for 6 months, and then they give you a different job. And you have that job for 6 months, and then they give you one final one before they employ you as a full-time employee. So my first job was in biosecurity in New Zealand. I worked in plant import risk management, and I'll talk about in a moment. And my second job, or second rotation, it's within the Strategy and Insights Directorate, and I am a policy analyst in the science policy team. So the timeline for your rotations is you start of the year, you start in January, you do 6 months, end of July, then you move into your second one, do another 6 months. Then as you go into your third one, by now you're pretty well established because you've been working for a year. So you can either do it for 4 months and then go back to one of your other rotations, or you can do it for up to 8 months before taking up a job. And that job can be in one of the teams you've been in before or in something completely different. The rotations, they can be very, very varied. So you don't have to do just one thing, and it doesn't have to be something that you expect to do. I'll go through the ones that I've done, and then I'll give a couple more examples of things that other people are doing. So my first one was plant import risk management. The one thing that you need to know about New Zealand is it is extremely complicated, and we do a lot of things here that you wouldn't expect or that you may not even really consider. And one of those ones for me was the plant production industry. It never really occurred to me that somebody had to be growing the plants that you buy. But here we are. Now I know that, and now I know how it works. So plant import risk management, essentially what we were doing is we were managing the biosecurity risks on incoming plant imports, as the name might suggest. And that kind of ranged from importing new genetics when people would import a new variety, which they would then propagate, or it would be somebody wants a very specific plant and they just need to bring in their stocks because their stocks have all been taken away by a cyclone, for example, and they just need to replenish those. So what that involves is a lot of management on risk assessment. Sorry, I probably should have put a trigger on the spiders on the slide, but um, it involves the risk assessment and the risk management of biological pests in their entirety. So that includes anything from bacteria, viruses, fungus to, like crazy pests, like Xylella fastidiosa. I'm not sure if you guys would have heard, to live pests, so insects, mites, thrips, all of these things which could potentially come in on a plant import. The photo on the right there, that is actually from MPI's entomology collection. I thought that was a cool photo. I've got a fair few more, but not in this presentation. It's extremely extensive and to the point where if there is a single specimen of a single mite, we can send it to the MPI lab and they will have an ID on it and they will have a specimen of it, unless it's something which has never come through ever before. So plant import risk management. My day to day, it was pretty interesting. I would generally get into work, check my emails. I'd have a lot of emails, and I would work on one of two projects. So one of my projects was to amend the import health standard for nursery stock. We have a bunch of different import health standards, and they cover different plant types that you're bringing in. Nursery stock are the baby plants, so your plants in vitro or your cuttings that you're importing, those type of things. And I was amending our import requirements on importing vitis or grape stock, and that's because we had identified that there was a risk of 3 viral pests. I was given a risk assessment, and then I needed to make a management decision based on the assessment as to how we were going to do that, how we were going to manage those risks. And the way that we managed to do it was by doing PCR tests on all of the things that are coming in. So all vitis plants that come in now, they need to be swabbed and then PCR'd for these 3 specific viruses. And if it's a positive, then it needs to be destroyed. If it's a negative, then it's all good to get into New Zealand. As well as that, so when I was doing that, it was actually quite front-facing, connecting a lot with industry, talking a lot to the people who are importing, a lot of our growers. They wanted to know why we're making specific decisions. And so the skills that I learned in my degree for science communication, so breaking things down, explaining a rationale in a way that people are going to understand. Generally, these people won't have a science background, was really, really useful. The other great skill in this role that I was able to use was analytical skills. Um, I'm sure that you all hate writing essays and doing literature reviews, etc., but those analytical skills are extremely useful. I use them every day, and yeah, condensing information to be able to make a decision and make an informed decision at that is something which is I'm really grateful that I'm able to do. Uh, we would make we would do permits, we'd do lots of public consultations, we would analyze emerging risks. It was quite full on, but it was a really cool job, and it felt like I was contributing to something because the plant import industry in New Zealand is huge, and I'm making active decisions to try and protect that industry. My second rotation is science policy. So this is the rotation I'm in at the moment, and this is the reason that I came to MPI in the first place. It kind of worked out perfectly for me. As I was finishing with my first rotation, one of the analysts was leaving in the science policy team, so I just slipped right in there, and it worked out great. I'm doing a couple of things in this role. One of my major things that I do is I provide expert advice on emerging genetic technologies. I'm sure you all will have seen that National is planning on removing the ban on GE and GMO. And so one of my jobs is to explain what that might mean for New Zealand, how it's going to affect our primary sector. And, a lot of the people who are working in government, they will have a science background, but not in genetics, for example, or not in molecular biology. And so while they might understand the basics, they don't understand the implications that you would have as a molecular biologist. And so, yeah, I do a lot of explaining that. I'm sure you guys will have seen the analogy with the chef and the different recipes, etc. That's on the right there. That's a slide pack that I was presenting to my directorate just recently. Another thing that I work on is I am the lead policy analyst on what's something called the Horticultural Technology Catalyst, and that's part of the Agritech Industry Transformation Plan. Sorry, it's a lot of words. Basically, what we're trying to do is we're trying to transform the agricultural technology industry. Again, as the name might suggest, we're trying to up our profits from 3.6 billion to 8 billion by 2030. And so we have been allocated $29 million to try and get horticultural technology off the ground. And I'm one of the lead policy analysts for MPI on that. So I work really closely with industry, Callaghan Innovation, and NZTE and MBIE, and yeah, do a lot of you know understanding concepts and breaking things down, a lot of data analysis, trying to make sure that we're hitting all the KPIs, or checking the right boxes that we're getting to. Um, yeah, we also do a lot of requests for expert advice. So somebody, for example, if they want to implement some kind of technological innovation or scientific innovation, they'll come to us and we can give them expert advice as to what we think that might mean for New Zealand's agricultural sector, what we think that might mean for them, and how best to implement that. And we also connect science across MPI to research. We connect research to MPI, um, as well as doing something called Te Ara Paerangi, which is the reform of the science system. I'm not sure you guys would have heard of that, but if you plan on going into PhD, it will come up. So remember the name. I'll just quickly go through what it's like actually working at MPI. So that's a photo of my desk. I took that today. Um, when I first started at MPI, I had no idea what I was going to be doing. I didn't know what MPI was. I didn't know what we did, and I didn't know what my day-to-day would look like. So essentially, there's lots of benefits, and it is fantastic. Um, it is an office job. That is, an undeniable fact. I go into the office every day. You've got your computer and two monitors, and they set you up real nice with a headset and keyboard and whatever. I'm on the 13th floor, so I have a beautiful view of Wellington City. It's fantastic. Um, and we get a lot of benefits. Specifically in the grad program, you get a lot of benefits. One of the things they that people like about grads is that they can hire you without needing to interview you. When you go into the program, you've been screened. They do all your academic record checks. If you're a grad, then they know that you're going to be a good employee, essentially. 14 people will get into the grad program. Last year we had, I think it was 650 applicants. So it is really tight, but that shouldn't stop you from applying because it is a fantastic opportunity, and working at MPI is really great. I've got a couple of things on the slide here. We get additional MPI annual leave. I think we get an additional 8 days to your standard contract. You get sick days from day one. Um, every couple of weeks, we'll have a career development opportunity. So we've done presentation skills, we've done credibility skills, meeting etiquettes, all these kinds of things. Leading in the public sector, and of course, can't miss the salary. We get salary reviewed every 6 months. So you have an opportunity to go up in salary every 6 months for the first 18 months. And then when you get into your permanent position, you go up yearly. I am mindful that I am running out of time, so I'm just going to rip through this really quickly. The application process is very long for the grad program, but it's not too difficult. So you submit your cover letter. These were the timings from this year. Then you do a digital interview where you talk to the camera with nobody behind it. They'll ask you a question, you record your answer. You then need to do a written assessment, which is generally they'll give you a piece of reading and you need to condense that into a one page as to something you'd give to your manager. And then you have a panel interview, and you'll generally have four interviewers, and they'll ask you things like, what do you do in your spare time, and like how would you approach this scenario and things like that. Then they'll reference check you, and then you'll be hired in October, and then you start in January. Um, Obviously a long time between October and January, but they look after you in that time. So they'll pay you relocation costs if you're moving to Wellington. They'll cover all your ferry, all your petrol, all your food when you're traveling. If you get to Wellington and you don't have accommodation, they'll pay for you to stay in a hotel until you find accommodation. So yeah, they look after you really well, and it's really good. Couple tips. Postgrad gives you an edge for sure, but it is not essential. There are grads in my cohort who do not have postgrad degrees, and you absolutely don't need one. I would recommend doing it just because I thought postgrad was awesome and definitely a great experience. But again, you don't need it. Any co-curricular involvement you do, chuck it in your CV. It looks great. Talk about it in your interview. They want to know that you're a well-rounded person, not that you're just, an academic legend. It's Ministry for Primary Industries, not Ministry of Primary Industries. And my final tip is that confidence is key. Okay. If you go in there projecting confidence, even if you don't have the best CV, then they're going to remember you, and they're going to remember your face. They're going to remember you as that person who went in there, shook their hand, and like looked them in the eye. So absolutely a key quality that you should be trying to portray. If you have any questions, you can look me up on LinkedIn, or send me an email. That's my MPI email down there. I'm happy to chat, happy to help people with applications, etc. So, yeah, good luck.